Hands over here on the other side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the other side. Good morning, everybody. Sean Kelly, Member of the European Parliament, Minister Ciarán O'Donnell, invited guests, elected representatives, colleagues and friends. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome you to the University of Limerick on this lovely July morning. It falls on me, Professor Mairead Moriarty, to welcome you as our President, Professor Kirsten May, is currently on a period of well-earned annual leave. I hope you will agree that our campus, of which we are so proud, is truly stunning, and I hope you have an opportunity to enjoy it during your time here. It is both a privilege and an opportunity for us to host this event here on our campus, which traces its roots back to 1972, and indeed we are just at the end of a year-long celebration of our 50th anniversary. In a nice symmetry with today's topic, we look to the future and to the next 50 years of UL. And indeed, the very building in which you find yourself has just been awarded a 25 million capital investment to refurbish and refit to extend the main building. The funding awarded under the second round of the Higher Education Strategic Investment Fund, announced by Minister Simon Harris in April, will allow for a 9,462 square metre extension and a 2,823 square metre refurbishment of this 36 square metre building. Originally built in the 1970s, allowing us to deliver enhanced research-led teaching and learning spaces. It is vital funding from the government that will allow us for a complete and full transformation of the main building and its surrounding places, but also to advance the attainment of the climate action targets. The existing main building is one of the poorest performing buildings on this campus in terms of CO2 emissions and both electrical and thermal consumption. The energy performance of this existing building will be significantly improved by this project. I tell you this because, as you know, buildings account for approximately 40% of the EU energy consumption and 36% of the energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. We also recently published our Climate Action Roadmap 2030, which charts a list of ambitious actions and projects to guide progress towards becoming a carbon-neutral university. The plan details a commitment to becoming a sustainable university, an absolute alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and the underpinning of sustainability in all its forms across all aspects of the university and our campus, here and in the city. Commitments include retrofitting buildings to upgrade heat, lighting, and energy sources, adopting sustainable forms of transport within and between campuses with a focus on physical mobility where possible, and the sourcing of most of the food consumed in the university from the bioregion and on or from our own university gardens. This is something President May has spoken of often, and she has pointed out that the rapid pace of societal growth has caused us to exceed many of Earth's planetary boundaries. We are now living in a deficit, consuming resources at a rate at which they cannot be replenished. The defining challenge of the 21st century will be to balance social progress and environmental boundaries. Which brings us to the purpose of today's event, which is to discuss the implications of current national and EU-level policies and legislation, and secondly, to highlight the available resources for people and to promote companies and technologies involved in energy-related renovations. The core point of the discussions is the link to EU policies to the concrete actions of citizens and businesses. While there are several pieces of EU legislation that affect carbon emissions of buildings, it is building owners and local authorities that ultimately oversee retrofits and renovations. And therefore, a particular focus will be directed at access to finance and what financial instruments are available for those thinking of retrofitting their homes and buildings. It falls on you, elected representatives, policy experts, industry experts, and citizens to examine the implication of current national and EU-level policies and legislation to look at resources and ways to promote companies and technologies involved in energy-related renovations. I hope you have a meaningful discussion today, and again, it is a pleasure to welcome you here to the University of Limerick, where we hope some of the solutions needed to improve our future may well be discovered. If I may, I'd like to invite Carol Meehan, Commercial Director of AIB Homes, for her keynote address.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Professor Moriarty, and you're all very welcome here this morning. You are most welcome for what I think is going to be an exciting event and a good conversation. And I'm delighted that I have the opportunity to talk to you about AIB and what we're doing in this space. My name is Carol Meehan. I am the Commercial Director for AIB Homes, leading the mortgage sales business around the country, but also driving the home strategy and the homes propositions right across our customer base and the country. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today to take the time to discuss this important topic, and I am delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what it means to AIB and how we are supporting our customers in retrofitting and investing in their homes. It's also great to see so many stands in the lobby, and I'm looking forward to speaking to a lot of you later on. And a very warm welcome to our AIB customers who have a stand, and to my own team who are also in the lobby this morning to answer any queries you may have. Today's event, Retrofitting Ireland, Building Resilience in Irish Homes, gives us the opportunity to consider how we can better support customers in this area, which is challenging but also a very exciting time for our country. As the pace of the sustainability agenda continues to grow in importance and significance, so too does the demand on all stakeholders to participate, deliver and develop on the required national sustainability targets and ambitions. This requires collective effort and collaboration across all parties. Renovations and retrofitting are a key part of AIB's strategy, and it is also a big focus under the European Green Deal. This area being such a priority has led to more ambitious targets at national government level. And I think it is important to acknowledge the progress that we've made so far. Some of the stats that I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks and days, property upgrades are up about 170% on 2022, and more than 3,000 homes were upgraded to a BER rating of B2 or higher, which is up about 230% since last year. And I think well in excess of 10,000, I don't know the latest number, but well in excess of 10,000 home energy upgrades through SEAI, which I know is supported by the government. The overall retrofitting target for 2023 is to support 37,000 home energy upgrades. And based on the progress to date and the robust pipeline of work that's already in the system, we expect that that target can be achieved this year, which shows that we are moving in the right direction. Turning to banking. The Banking and Payments Federation of Ireland, who represent the banking industry, is seeking that the revised Energy Performance Buildings Directive will provide credit institutions with access to national databases of energy performance certificates, which will allow us to correctly assess the climate-related risks on our balance sheets. The BPFI also believe that the new mechanism of mortgage portfolio standards should be used on a voluntary basis to incentivise banks to be creative in how we support all customers on their journey to living more sustainable lives. From an AIB perspective, I will summarise our approach under 3 key points. Firstly, sustainability is at the heart of our strategy. Sustainable communities is a core pillar in AIB, and through our pledge to do more, we are committed to playing our part in building long-term resilience not only in the Irish economy and society, but also in our own business. We recognise that as the biggest bank in the country, with our size and scale, comes responsibility to our customers, which we absolutely acknowledge and embrace. AIB was the first mortgage lender in Ireland to bring a green mortgage proposition to the market in 2020, and green mortgages now account for 1 in 4 of all new mortgages in AIB. Secondly, as leaders in the banking sector, we have set ambitious targets and we are making progress against them. We want 70% of our new lending to be green or transition lending by 2030, and that's only 7 years away. Last year, we did 3.3 billion in green lending, bringing our total to 9 billion green lending since 2019. Our ambition is to be net zero in our own operations by 2030, and we achieved a 10% reduction in our own operational emissions in 2022, which is a total of 40% reduction since 2019. And we've also announced the corporate purchase power agreement with NTR plc to provide AIB with 80% of our energy needs through their solar farms in Wexford, which are currently under development. We want a net zero customer portfolio by 2040 with a net zero agri portfolio by 2050. And we already have a plan in place on how we're going to achieve this for 75% of our loan book. And that plan has already been externally validated, and we will report our progress against that on an annual basis. And thirdly, while we have made sustainability a clear priority in our strategy and set ourselves ambitious targets, we understand that it is through supporting our customers that we can make the greatest impact and bring about real change. AIB holds 30 billion of mortgage lending, which is about 50% of our balance sheet, and we are heavily invested in providing customer-focused solutions to the climate challenge. We will continue to play a significant role in supporting the delivery of the much-needed 350,000 domestic retrofits by 2030. And to do this, we need to work with all our customers in providing them with guidance and finance options, which requires ongoing evolution of our proposition. Our proposition suite already has been extended to support customers in this area. We have our AIB Green Mortgage offering. We have our top-up mortgage for existing AIB customers. We have our lowest cost green consumer loan, where customers can borrow up to €60,000 to fund green actions like the installation of solar panels, the provision of insulation, or the purchase of an electric vehicle. And our Green Living Hub, which is located on aib.ie, providing customers with guidance and details of the supports that are available. And while I appreciate this event is more for consumers and renovating homes, it's worth mentioning how AIB is also supporting the property and SME sector. We have the SBCI Energy Efficient Loan Scheme and the sustainability linked loans, which encourage our corporate customers to progress their own sustainability and transition actions. Of course, there are challenges, and the main one being the cost of living challenge, which faces all of us. Cost of living challenges and the energy crisis are impacting consumers' appetite for taking greater sustainable action in their personal lives. And yet, according to our own AIB sustainability survey carried out by Amórach, people remain positive towards more sustainable living, particularly in relation to wind farms, electric vehicles, recycling, reducing food waste and plastic use. More than half of those surveyed mentioned cost as the first barrier preventing people from making more sustainable changes in their personal lives. We've also seen that 50% of consumers are planning to take out a green loan related to these works in the next 12 months. And there is widespread belief among consumers about the need to improve the energy efficiency of their home, but most are unaware of the schemes available, and only a minority of those have checked if they qualify. I think the summary point for me is that people want to do the right thing, and we all need to help them to do it. This is why events like today are so helpful, because it drives the type of collaboration that is required across government, the public sector and the private sectors. Everyone has a role to play, and we all can and need to do more. Finally, I would ask you to please engage actively in the discussions and ask plenty of questions this morning. We are privileged to have such a quality of panellists and a great agenda this morning. I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to be with you all and talk about what we're doing from an AIB perspective. Enjoy the morning, everybody, and thank you very much.
Good morning, Carol, agus good morning, all of Moraid. Falter rif Kilogin and Shaw and Margin, agus Tassulgum Community Tanevas on law. So, Minister, councillors, Tamar Michael, and guests, and particularly our distinguished panel, delighted to be here this morning. Thanks, Professor Moraid, for inviting us. It's always great to be in UL. And I always relax when I'm here, because it reminds me of the first time I was a guest speaker in university. It was when I was president of the GAA. I was asked to be guest speaker. I think it was for the Fitzgibbon Cup presentation of medals in UCG. Now I think that's called NUIG. But anyway, it was lovely, great occasion. But when I came out afterwards, my car was clamped. That won't happen here, Professor Moraid. So thank you very much, and it's great to have you here. Now we'll get down to business, and firstly, it's great to have the Minister for State, who's responsible for this area, Kieran O'Donnell, a very good friend of mine for many years. Very appropriate because he's Limerick-based, and to have it here in UL, this event, everything synchronises. So to tell us what the government position is, how they see this panning out into the future, and particularly the area he's involved in himself, particularly planning. Let's see what actually Kieran is planning. So Kieran O'Donnell, to the stage, please. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sean, and delighted to be here this morning. So MEP Sean Kelly, Senator Maria Byrne, our councillor colleagues Michael Murphy and Tom Ruddle, and more particularly the distinguished panel and the guests. And I suppose it's, as Sean said, not only is it fitting to have it here in UL, but it's fitting coming to the home of the All-Ireland champions as well, Sean. And no disrespect to Carol, but we're hoping a Kerry victory on Sunday. Okay, so so I suppose what I really want to do really is, and I was listening to Carol, and I'm certainly heartened by the fact that quarter-year loans are now green loans, right, which is very positive. But I want to really, I suppose, set out a framework of where I see, where we are, we'll say, and our thinking in terms of specifically on this issue, building resilient to Irish homes. So I very much fall in, I'm Minister for State with responsibility for planning, and then the whole area of dereliction, the Creek Coney scheme, and just bringing properties back into use is something that I'm very much, I suppose, dealing with. So if I could look at just, I suppose, a few headline issues. At the moment, in terms of this particular issue, for new homes, all new buildings must be aerated. All new buildings now have heat pumps. In terms of our targets, we want, and Carol made reference to it earlier, we are looking at 500,000 homes being retrofitted to a B2 rating by 2050. We want 400,000 homes who have existing heating system retrofitted to heat pumps by 2030. And what are we doing to do that? So, as Carol said, in this current year, I suppose just to give context, we're looking at this as being a decade-long project in terms of housing. We delivered under, and SEAI are the conduit in terms of delivering these programs, and they do great work. We delivered 15,000 upgrades in 2021. In 2022, we delivered 27,000. And as Carol has already stated, we're looking at doing 37,000 in the current year. And then we're looking to ramp up between 2026 and the end of by 2030, it's 75,000 homes per year. The retrofitter plan has 4 pillars: to drive demand and activity, the financing and funding, which the banks are key in, the supply chain, and the standards and governance. And I take on board what Carol said about people being aware. The schemes are there. Obviously, we're furthering on the schemes. SEI have their own public awareness campaign, but it's something that we're conscious of, and it's something that we're bringing on a lot of new programs, and we want to ensure that people fully understand. So we'll be ramping up our public information campaign. In terms of the number of grants that were received last year to SEI, 50,000 applications for homeowners were received, and that's a 150% increase in 2021. In terms of the schemes themselves, people aware, in terms of homes, there are really 3 main schemes. There's the Better Energy Home Scheme, there's the Better Energy Warmer Home Scheme, and then there's the National Home Energy Scheme. I'll deal with the Warmer Home Scheme, straightforward scheme for people who are on social welfare. It's done through the one-stop shop. They get 100% coverage. The Better Energy Home Scheme is a scheme. Well, I'll deal with the national one first, because I think that's probably more relevant, really. The National Energy Retrofit Home Scheme. That scheme is done through the one-stop shop. You must achieve a B2 rating, and then there are various grants available under that scheme. And then you have the Better Energy Home Scheme, which is a scheme that the individual can do it themselves, appoint their own contractor, don't necessarily have to meet the B2 rating. We want to move to that. So they're the 3 schemes. In February of last year, we increased the grants available under all of those schemes, but more, we'll say in the private schemes, the Better Home and then the national scheme, to 50% on average of a grant, with 80% available for attic insulation. So that brings, I suppose, the key thing there. And you made reference, Sean made reference in terms of planning. So what else have we done? Last year, we extended the exemption for solar panels on houses. So as it stands now, in essence, houses are now exempted from any form of planning permission required for solar panels. They need to maybe leave 50 centimetres of a distance at the end. Furthermore, and they're covered with grants in the order of 50% through the SEAI. Furthermore, since the 1st of May of this year, any installation of a solar panel, so you have a contractor who both provides and installs, it's 0% rated for VAT. So that means that we are putting in place policies that we're trying to reduce the cost of people putting in solar panels. And ultimately what we want is the people in time, and some are already doing it, that they're basically supplying back into the grid themselves. And that's the key focus. We've put, I suppose, 256 million into the retrofit schemes this year. One of the things, and people may have heard it this morning, the government are committed to putting in place a low-cost loan scheme for people to be able to, working with the banks, a much lower rate of interest, of the order maybe 3.5%. That scheme is complex in that it's effectively going to involve the European Investment Banks, the European Investment Fund, the Strategic Investment Bank, and more particularly, we've had calls. Many of the banks have shown interest. I have no doubt AIB being one of those. We are hoping to finalise that in the latter half of this year. So that we want to once again make it encourage people, make it possible for people to move with retrofitting. Just to, I suppose, a couple of key areas in our own area. Social housing, very much within our department. So last year we retrofitted 2,283. This year we're going to do 2,400. And what we're looking to do is 36,500 homes by 2030, not 2050, but 2030, to a B2 rating. And that'll be 40% of all the social housing stock by 2030 will be at a B2 rating. What we also want to do is that in terms of voids programme, which is where houses that become vacant local authority stock, we want to bring those back into use. We're targeting about 2,300 of those back into use, and they obviously will be to a B2 rating. What we're also looking as well is that we're looking at pilot model programs where to support the banks, the local authorities to be able to do more retrofitting and to, I suppose, bringing more voids back into use. So we're working with European Investment Bank with a number of local authorities and AHBs. Ironically, one of them being Limerick City and County Council on my doorstep, Dublin City Council and Cooperative Housing Ireland, which is an approved housing body. And what we're looking is to see if there's options there in terms of providing supports to the local authorities in terms of low-cost loans to move in that area as well. Can I deal with the other actions and what else are we doing? And it's going back to the existing houses. So you'll be aware in terms of the SEI grants, the Warmer Homes, which is the free scheme, is for houses built pre-2006. The other two schemes, which will be regarded as private schemes, for houses built pre-2011. The one area that comes up is embodied carbon, which is in existing houses. So a couple of, I suppose, key policy areas that we're pursuing at the moment. Firstly, we're engaging with SEAI to do provide a framework for embodied carbon. What we're also looking at as well, and the European, the energy directive for buildings, the energy performance of building directive. That's at the moment in draft form, and speaking to MEP Sean Kelly, Sean was saying that it's gone through the European Parliament and it's currently at negotiation stage. One of the elements in that is in terms of calculating embodied carbon. So we're moving ahead at the moment where we're looking at from the 1st of January 2027 that what's been required under this directive is that to calculate the embodied carbon of all new buildings over 2,000 metres squared, which I suppose is very large buildings, and we'd hope to have that available by the end of 2025, the actual calculation basis for that. We're also at the moment engaging with my colleague, Minister Pippa Hackett in the Department of Agriculture, where we've established an independent working group to look at the use of timber construction. And where we're also looking to do as well, and we're looking at this by the end of the year, is that we'd publish a lifetime assessment report for embodied carbon in traditional buildings. We're looking to have that done by the end of the year, and we'll be doing that specifically within the department itself. What we're also, I suppose, moving on is that the whole area, and Carol made reference to it, that the issue around Croí scheme and the older properties. We've brought out a scheme whereby if a property is built before 2008, it qualifies for 50,000 of a grant if it's vacant for more than 2 years. If it's deemed to be derelict by the local authority, that will be on the derelict register, or they're deemed by a report from an engineer, qualify an additional €20,000, which is 70,000. We've nearly 3,000 people interested in that scheme to date. So it's going well, but it's a scheme we want to really promote. You can get probably another 20,000, 24,000 plus on top of that through SEI grants. Can I deal with rental properties? And just in terms of encouraging people with rental properties to retrofit their homes, the properties they have. Firstly, the schemes that are available on the SEI are available to people with rental properties as well. No limit on the number of properties. That's one. So we want to encourage that. Secondly, in the Finance Bill 2022, we brought in a tax relief of up to €10,000, where a landlord will basically retrofit a house with a tenant in situ. So it's not pre-letting, it's for existing properties that are there. Now, what we're also looking to do then is under the Housing for All, we have said that we are looking to make rental properties achieve a minimal BER rating where feasible from 2025. So how are we going to do that? We've just appointed the ESRI, our own department, to do work on this, and we'd hope to have something by the end of the year. So it's not something we're going to bring in overnight. It's something that we're now in 2023. We're going to flag exactly how it will operate in practice. We're going to flag exactly the impact it will have on rental properties. But ultimately our objective is that we want to get to that target of 500,000 homes achieving a B2 rating by 2050. That's roughly about 30% of the stock. That's a reasonable, realistic target to achieve, but to do that we need people to come on board. A couple of things that I suppose that I want to address as well. The one-stop shops we've set up around, there are now 17 nationwide, which are to assist people to avail of the SEI schemes. They're up and running, they're highly efficient. If people make contact with them, consumers, they will make people aware of the grants, of the loans that are available through the banks. But we're looking to bring in, as I said earlier, a low-cost loan scheme in that area as well. I suppose the other thing is in terms of the capacity of the sector, the construction sector, to meet it. So we are trying to match the targets on an annual basis. So the 37,000 target for retrofitting homes this year is based on what we believe is the capacity in the sector. And I suppose I'm here today as well. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. I'm in the listening mode as well. I want to see how people feel the schemes are working, what questions they may have, what additional supports they'd like to see in place. But ultimately what we're trying to do is, in terms of new buildings, they're already there, A rating, heat pumps. In terms of the existing buildings, that's the real target. In terms of, obviously with the embodied carbon, we're bringing out a measure in compliance with and we're going ahead of the European directive. And we're very much looking at having that in place in terms of calculating the calculation for embodied carbon in new buildings above 2,000 metres square by the 1st of January 2027. But ultimately, what we want here is we want to ensure that we continue to roll out schemes, but it's not just about rolling out additional schemes. It's about ensuring that people take up what are schemes that are already there. You don't necessarily always have to reinvent the wheel. And for me, I'm in this role a relatively short period of time, but I'm as much interested in getting people to be aware of what we have, using the existing schemes. In many cases, if we roll out too many schemes, it causes confusion. And in many cases, all it actually may require is a tweak in an existing scheme. In many cases, those tweaks come from the questions from people who are on the coalface, on the ground. The sectors we have here, obviously the consumers, ACAI itself are here, the banks, the credit unions, the politicians at government level, European level, in terms of the directive coming through. But ultimately here, I think there is now momentum there with the general public. It's not a question of whether we want to achieve the green agenda. It's how we do it. How we do it in a sustainable way. How we ensure that we bring businesses with us, we bring households. I didn't touch on business because it wasn't done, but people were aware the grants are available. On the planning side, we have made it, once again, increase the exemptions in terms of solar panels on businesses. So everything is being designed to encourage people to take up the retrofitting so we can, and going back to I suppose the initial, the stark figures is that houses and homes are contributing in a huge way to our carbon footprint. So therefore, it's an area we need to address. So really, in conclusion, thank you for the invite, Sean. I really look forward to the engagement, and this is a very worthwhile discussion in my old alma mater, UL. Thank you all very much.
Good Arrow O'Donnell, very clear and delighted with a few points you made, reflecting what Carol Meehan said, moving in the right direction. And especially you mentioned about the one-stop shops, which are crucial, 17 of them, and also targets on an annual basis, because it's too easy, and often happens in politics, targets for 2040 or 2050, or maybe 23,000, whatever. What's actually happening this year? That's the key. And having spent 2 years working on the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, we've now, as you said, passed it through Parliament. It's gone to trilogue stage. We've got to hit the targets. And people, as you absolutely rightly said, want to be involved, but they need more information, and that's why we organised this today. So now, to give you more information, I'm calling on our wonderful panel, and we really do have a great panel. I'm very grateful to them to come on stage, and then we will get down to brass tacks with each of them. So Sean Michael Collins, Head of EIB Homes in Area South. Hubert Fitzpatrick, Director General of Construction Industry Federation. Kieran Byrne, Director of National Retrofit at SEAI, and you mentioned him several times, Kieran. Julian Tammy, Policy Officer, National Renovating Strategies, Funding International Cooperation on Buildings Policy at the European Commission. And Niall O'Connor, Managing Director of Kingspan Insulation Ireland. So what the format will be, I will give each of them a few minutes to speak and to make their presentation, and then afterwards we will have a general discussion with them. So I will start with Julian Tammy from the European Commission. It's great to have somebody from the European Commission because they're charged basically with implementing or ensuring that European legislation is implemented across Europe, and also, of course, they initiate an awful lot of the schemes, especially financial schemes, that are there to help people. And Julian is a very wise man, because currently he's holidaying in Ireland, and he went to the best county to holiday, Kerry. He did the Ring of Kerry, and he stayed in Randall's Court Hotel last night, and I collected him this morning around 8 o'clock to bring him here, and then he's going on to, sorry, Kieran, Cork. So, Julian, thank you for coming, and each speaker 5 to 10 minutes max. Okay. Thank you very much.
I speak here or from here?
Yes, wherever there, wherever suits you. There.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone, for having me here. I'm very glad to be here in Ireland. It's my second time, but first time in Kerry and Limerick. As Sean said, I was on holiday, so sorry for my outfit. I'm in sneakers because yesterday I was on the Kerry Way, walking to this conference, hiking to this conference, I would say. And it's really a pleasure to be here. Well, I don't have to repeat all what we have heard, but I just want to say that yesterday I was reading the news, and July will most likely be the hottest months ever recorded in globally. So you don't feel it now in Ireland. Yeah, I didn't feel it on the way to here. It was kind of wet, but of course Ireland also will be impacted. Is already impacted for sure. So I don't want to repeat the call for action, which is very important. And buildings are a fair contributor, as the previous speakers were mentioning. And just to give you the overall framework, to remind the overall framework from the EU. So I work in the European Commission in the department which is working on the energy performance of building directive, which was mentioned by the minister just before me. And well, this directive is under the Green Deal package. So you know the Green Deal is has a target to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, and we have an intermediate milestones in 2030 to decrease the emissions by 55%. And we have issued a package of laws, of regulations, that we call the Fit for 55 package. In this package, we have the energy performance of building directives, and we have other directives that are relevant for buildings, like the energy efficiency directives and the renewable energy directives. All these directives sounds a bit very bureaucratic, but at the end, it's real targets. It's real targets that will impact people. So the energy efficiency directive sets a target of reducing the energy consumption. The renewable energy directive set up a target to reach a certain amount of a certain share of renewable energy sources in each member state's mix. And the energy performance of building directives plays also its role. As it was mentioned, it's currently under negotiation between the Parliament and the Council, the member states. This is what we call the trilogues, and we hope to conclude these negotiations by the end of this year under the Spanish presidency. Because next year, as you know, there will be a European election, there will be a new commission, so it's really important that we have this law through this year still. So what I will mention here, the main provisions are the provisions included in the Commission's proposal. At the end of the negotiation, it may be a bit different, but I can only speak of what we put on the table. There are two main axes in this directives. It's targeting, as the minister says, new buildings and existing buildings. So new buildings, in the directive we said that by 2030 all new buildings must be zero emissions buildings. In some countries it's already the case, but other countries, Europe is very diverse. We have Nordic countries, we have Eastern European countries, Mediterranean countries, so it's very different. So the directive sets a framework, and then every member state have to be in a framework. Some are front runners, so some are a bit lagging behind, but the directive sets the framework. So new buildings, zero energy, and the other pillar is existing buildings. And this is, we think, the most important, as the minister said, because there is a statistics in Europe that 85% of the buildings that are standing now will be still standing in 2050. So if you don't address this stock of buildings, you will never reach the targets. So how we will do that? We need to increase the renovation rate. So I'm very glad that to hear all the targets that you have in Ireland, which are very ambitious. And also Sean reminded that it's good to have future targets, but what we want to increase is the renovation rate per year. How many buildings are really retrofitted per year? And retrofitted in a meaningful way, not only changing the window, at least reaching what we call a medium depth renovation, which means to achieve at least 30% of energy savings. So how we will do that? Well, in the EPBD, there is a provision called the minimum energy performance standards. That means that every building will have to reach a certain energy class. So I think in Ireland you call this building energy rating. So the idea is that every building will have to reach a certain class by a certain date. All the class and the date is subject to negotiations ongoing now. So we will know better at the end. And the idea is to really target the worst performing buildings first. The 15% that are consuming the most energy and that are the less efficient. So this is on the regulatory side, but of course regulation is not the solution. It's not the only solution. You cannot have this without supporting people. And there is in the EPBD, I use acronyms, so the directive is EPBD. There is a comprehensive framework to support people on the financing side, on technical assistance side, on the one-stop shop side. So we are encouraging these initiatives and exchange of best practices between countries. This is the role of the Commission. So the member states are implementing, Ireland is implementing, but if we see a good example in one country, we try to make the exchange of best practices. So the key here is really financing, but also assistance, one-stop shop, raising awareness. We keep saying that, but it's very important because there are many people that don't know that, or thinks it's too complicated, or there is too much paperwork, or they don't know how to do and how to engage. So even if the funding is here, we need people to get it, and that is why the EPBD is including provision for that. Why also? Because the worst performing buildings are most often the ones where vulnerable, if not poor, households are living. So in fact, it's really a win-win-win situation if you retrofit a building, because you will decrease your energy bill, you will live in a better home, better conditions, you will create jobs for the construction sectors, and the planet, you will help also the planet. So this is really the goal. On financing, maybe we'll have further, so I will not detail now the financing, but there is many EU financing, national financing available, but of course public financing cannot do everything. If you see the needs, even all the public money cannot, and public money you need also for education, you need for other sectors. So it will be really key also to unlock private financing, and we have a lot of speakers from the private institutions and financing institutions that can better explain this. I will just finish on some other EU policy texts or initiatives addressing especially heating and cooling, because buildings are a big contributor. Why? Because of the heating. I think in Ireland you're still relying a lot on fossil fuel, like in many other member states. It's not only your case, on oil boilers, for instance. So the provisions to make the transition on heating has been speeded up by the REPower EU initiatives, very important initiatives taken after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and really to free Europe from its dependency from Russian fossil fuel. And it aims to deploy 30 million of heat pumps by 2030 in the EU. I think I saw in Ireland it's about 300,000. Your target is 300,000, which is really much in line with this initiative, so it's very much welcome. We plan to phase out any public subsidies to fossil fuel heating by 25 now in the EPBD. Maybe in Ireland it's already, we have countries that it's already, there is no public subsidies, but there are countries where we still have, so we want to push this. And finally, we have also a directive called the Eco-Design Directives, which sets limits and targets on energy efficiency of products. And by this, we will try in the next years to increase the requirements for products on the market to reach a certain efficiency, and this will also push a bit out the fossil fuel heating system from this. So, well, this is the general framework now for the EU, and I'm sure I can reply to other questions a bit later. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julian, for setting the European perspective for us. So now to go into further detail, especially in the financial aspects of it, we have Sean Michael Collins. He's a member of the AIB Homes Senior Management Team and is the head of AIB Homes in Area South. And particularly they are moving to support what they call green mortgages too. That's hugely important because I came across, I think, a statistic some time ago when we were working on the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive that most of the retrofits that have taken place up until now have been done by across Europe by people with their own savings, something like 85%. The others were a minimum is 15%, got bank loans or credit union loans or whatever. So obviously that needs to change. And in fairness to AIB, who very kindly sponsoring today's event, they have schemes that fit into that. So now Sean Michael Collins will go into detail for us on those schemes. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, Sean, and good morning, everybody. Look, we are, on behalf of AIB, we are delighted to be here this morning. Just as a avid Cork GA fan, I wasn't necessarily looking forward to having to come up to Limerick this week, but we do have an ABK policy in Cork, so anyone but Kilkenny, so we were shouting mad. And I can assure Sean that ABK policy doesn't go into next weekend, right? So we'll all be shouting for Kerry. Sorry, just in terms of myself, I'm in charge of mortgage sales from Ennis across to Bray and down, right? So all mortgage sales in the bottom half of the country. AIB on whole have around 170 branches throughout the country. There's very strong penetration. We have over 300 mortgage sales staff, be it in those branches or on the phone, and we have a very strong online offering as well. So we have huge investment in the mortgage space and a huge penetration throughout the country. So, and as Carol spoke earlier, this space is very important to AIB. It is a part of our key strategic pillars, right? So achieving net zero by 2040 on our whole portfolio is a key driver within AIB. And even to give you a sense of that, every staff member in AIB had to do an online training assessment plus a test over the last few days. Every staff member, all 10,000 staff members, had to do it on this agenda. I passed, actually, by the way, right? So if you look back to the where we want to get to in terms of our portfolio at net zero by 2040, 50% of our portfolio is mortgages, residential properties. So it's a huge part of our agenda in terms of driving that. So Carol spoke a bit to it earlier. Just speak a bit more detail in terms of what we are doing. The green mortgage is what it is really is a discounted rate, right, which incentivizes customers to look for properties and take on properties with an attractive BEO rating. Okay, so your interest rates there are 3.65 to 3.85, very attractive, a lot more attractive than the other rates we have in the market. So that's one key lever we are pulling. Secondly, on our top-up space, right, so we did, over the last number of years, recognise that there is a gap in terms of banks needing to fund a lot more via top-up. So we've invested heavily in trying to improve that journey for customers. Our key mantra is let's make it as easy as possible for customers to get the funding piece of this journey. There's plenty of other barriers that customers are looking to overcome. It is getting simpler, and in AIB we are really looking to simplify that. So we've invested heavily in changing our credit policy, a lot less documentation needed if you're looking for a top-up. When you get into the drawdown space, if it's lower than 75,000, all you need is self-certified costings or maybe from one of our one-stop shop providers. These are the costings and the funds will go. So it makes it a lot easier than what it used to be. Still a lot more to do. And we are continuing to invest in that. But again, the mantra of just making it as easy as possible. We have a big online offering, which helps a lot in making it simple for customers. We can get express AIPs up front for customers. And we're investing heavily in being able to get even documentation from customers a lot more electronically, so customers don't have to be printing off anything. We will be rolling out, so for customers who are non-AIB banked, and we're looking for the bank statements, they can literally go into an app, press a button, and we get the bank statements into ourselves. No need for paper, no need for anything. But it also makes it a lot slicker and quicker from customers, especially if they're switching to us as well, with a view to renovating their property. Our green personal loan is very attractive in two ways. One, a very attractive rate, but also it's very slick. You can go in online, you can apply, you get approval straight away, you have the funds within a few hours. right? So that's very attractive. And then finally, as Carla would have mentioned, the AIB Green Livings Hub or space within the AIB website. It's really good, right? Honestly, right? So if you go into it, there's a whole lot of information in terms of what we're all going to be speaking about today. There's articles about heat pumps, articles about solar panels. There's all the whole BAR and how all that works. That's explained. There's links into the SEAI and how that works. And even within that as well, you have a compare finance option. So you can go in, you can mess around and say, look, I might spend 50,000, might be over 5 years. I press the button, it'll tell you what, if you do it by top up, what it'll look like, or if you do it by a green personal loan, what it will look like. So it gives you the different options, and you can play with that. And that's really useful for customers in terms of trying to overcome any concerns they would have in terms of the finance piece. So look, I hope that does give a sense in terms of where we're at. And look, I definitely think within the panel discussions, we'll be able to explore a lot more. Thanks, Sean.
Michael, thank you very much. And now we move to our next speaker, and SEAI is a group that people have heard a lot about in recent years. They're really pivotal to this whole area, and we're delighted to have Dr. Kieran Byrne, Director of National Retrofit and a member of the executive leadership team in SEAI, to speak to us. As I said, they're crucial to reaching our targets, which the Minister referred to on a number of occasions. So, Dr. Byrne, over to you.
Hi, thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here. I just put my cards in the deck. I'm married to a Kilkenny woman, so but it's good to be in the home of hurling, the real home of hurling, so delighted to be here. First of all, yeah, I'm the Director of National Retrofit in the SEAI, and we are at the pointy end of delivering on the targets the Minister referred to, and I can say it's been an extraordinary journey in terms of what we were doing and what we're going to do. The agency's been around for 20 odd years, but it has scaled up exponentially in the last 2 or 3 years. Yesterday, I believe, in my view, marks a real turning point. We had the Secretary General of the United Nations talking about the era of global boiling. Right. Now, I just happened to have spent the last couple of weeks on leave, and I deliberately left the laptop at home, but every other day we beat some other target. It was either the hottest, the wettest, the windiest, the fires, tourists. So people are really starting to understand that climate change is here and now. Now, that's up there in the nebulous kind of space, but what we do in the SEAI is very much in the tangible space of delivery. We have to achieve our CO2 emission reduction targets by 2030 and our sectoral budget by 2025. That's in the law of the land. We have to do this. So we're constantly modelling and looking at how we do it. Within the residential sector, for which I'm responsible for, we are not going to get to the wider target unless we address the residential sector. So the Minister talked about 500,000 B2 homes by 2030. He talked about 400,000 heat pumps. He talks about CO2 emission reduction, 40% in our carbon budget we have to do by 2030. That's a huge and extraordinary amount of work. But right now, the vast majority of our homes are still powered and fueled by fossil fuel, and we have to move away from that. We are starting to do it at scale. And so last year was, I suppose, a very seminal year for us because we completely reprofiled all of the schemes, and we also launched the one-stop shops, which is a really great innovation. And one-stop shops you're probably aware of, but I always describe it quite simply as, you know, for people, rather than getting kind of worried about what you do and how you do it and what order you do in terms of your retrofit, you bring in the professionals, and I see some of them in the audience here today, and they will manage your entire journey. It's somewhat analogous to building an extension of your house. Many of you will have done this over the years. You didn't start, you know, ringing electricians and ringing carpenters and ringing plasters. You got a builder in, he priced it up, he did the whole lot. That is basically what the one-stop shop service is, and it's working incredibly well. We've now 17 registered, and they are all, well, some of them have been registered since last year, but they're all on the journey. They all have maximum output. I can tell you every single one of those is busy, and we have very regular meetings with them, and they're all demonstrating plans of how they're scaling up to deliver on their businesses. We are on the, I suppose, the takeoff path of this new scheme. So you get a lot of people detractors saying, oh, you'll never make the target, you'll never do this, never do that, never do the other. To be totally honest with you all in the audience, I don't really pay a blind bit of heed to that. We've got to do what we do now and do it at scale. So when we make the first 1,000, we're good. Next 5,000, then 10,000, then 20, then 30, then 50. We will make the targets because the industry, and I see a lot of you sitting here today, are absolutely tooling up and pivoting around to help us deliver on that target. In difficult circumstances as well, because, you know, there's challenges out there. So the one-stop shops are changed, but also across all of the grant schemes, we've significantly increased the grant rates. And the Minister talked about, really importantly as well, we've had huge political support, and support on one level on a Monday, Tuesday. The Wednesday, Thursday, it's political drive, and by Friday we're getting beaten because we have to deliver those targets. But what we're doing is when we go into a department and ask for things, we get them. When we want to tweak schemes, we get them. And the Minister's made a great point about keeping it simple. One of the biggest, I suppose, barriers to retrofit and people get involved in it, they don't really know what to do. They don't know where to go. A lot of the people in this room are involved and interested in the energy transition and the retrofitting journey. Most people are busy with their daily lives, and it is busy out there for people with cost of living and things like that. So we've made it simple. And even if you're not going to go engage in the one-stop shop scheme, all of the other schemes are taking out those pain points. Like Michael said, reducing the amount of kind of interaction with customers, making it easier, trying to bring things online so we can build for scale. What we've used for the one-stop shops really is what I would call design thinking, outside-in thinking. Government departments and civil servants, unfortunately, have often been accused of going into a huddle in a department or an agency, coming up with a grand plan and launching it upon the world. We did the opposite with the one-stop shops. We'd had heavy engagement with the sector, heavy engagement with industry, heavy engagement with customers in terms of focus groups to figure out what will work. And we launched on that basis. And thus far, it's been very, very successful. The numbers aren't there yet because we're on the growth phase. This comment, I suppose, particularly to Hubert, there's any amount of opportunity. One thing I say when I talk to contractors, and I do this on a regular basis, any amount of opportunity in the sector. We're one of I think it's 2 government programs that have guaranteed funding out to the end of the decade. We have 8 billion euros to spend on this program out to the end of the decade. To be able to go into a group of contractors or a company and say, we have 8 billion euros to spend. 5 billion that is coming directly from the carbon tax. So when people have a carbon tax, this is where it's going to. That is incredibly powerful in terms of getting companies to sit up and listen. The other thing that's really, really powerful as well is that we have any amount of government policy in terms of residential retrofit plans, climate action plans, the Low Carbon Amendment Act. And if people decided, well, the government might change and they might forget all of that, we're participants in the the EU, and we have any amount of EU policy coming behind that. So the direction of change is not going to, it's not going to change direction. We're going in a particular direction. We have huge money, huge policy behind us, and we're trying to drive it at scale. And so we're inviting companies, people listening in the audience, if you have a company, maybe you want to think about getting involved, this is a good time. The other point as well is linking, and we talk about kind of just transition, the climate change being an economic one, there's huge opportunities in local areas, because wherever we have houses in this country, we have houses to retrofit. Anybody involved in the sector will see, for a long time in the construction sector, will realise there's been a lot of developments around our big cities, our Dublins, Limericks and Corks. There's a lot of rural areas where people have to get up very, very early in the morning to drive to those big cities. With the retrofitting idea, you can actually have a very satisfying, a long-term career working in your local area. So there's a huge kind of benefit in that part of it as well. On the schemes themselves, we have 3 broad schemes, if you want. We have on the energy, and it's time to talk about the energy poverty sector. We have the Warmer Home Scheme, which is a fully funded government scheme. And I can tell you now that the demand for that scheme is absolutely extraordinary. A combination of probably the crisis last year, the increase in oil prices, and also the focus on the schemes. We have close on 17,000 people on the list in the pipeline. We've just literally closed out in a new tender, a 700 million euro tender for provision of services in that scheme, and we're in the process of notifying successful companies. So that's a very significant amount of money over the next 4 years in terms of delivering for energy poverty. And we're driving as hard as we can on that scheme. But what we're doing as well is, and just reference the earlier comments, that scheme started off as a very community-based scheme, very light measures, a kind of a touch and maybe some insulation and CFL bulbs, and off we go. We've pivoted that to becoming a deeper retrofit scheme. So the average spend in the scheme is around about 22,000 euros per house. Not that many years ago, it was about 3,500 euros per house. So that'll give you a sense of the direction of travel on it. And because we're spending more, we're spending longer on the houses, so obviously the delivery takes a bit longer in relation to that. The other points we're talking about is, and Sean, you would have been very much involved in the EPBD, and the changes coming down on Ireland as a result of that are extraordinary. Most people haven't really a clue what's going on, but we do, and we're prepping up for them in terms of the embodied carbon, the minimum, the renovation passport, minimum energy performance standards. But what we're doing is we're blending those into the existing scheme. So a good example of that would be the renovation passport. We have a BER, a building energy rating. People are very familiar with that. It's been around since about 2005, 2006, and to be totally honest with you, up until about the last 2 years, nobody really paid much attention to it. It was a thing you had to do if you bought or sold your house or rented a house. Now it has value, it has teeth. So what we're looking to do as part of the EPBD is build a renovation passport. And for all intents and purposes, that's a bit like what the HSE did with the vaccine. Most people probably don't have their vaccine records. I can tell you the HSE do. Every time you got the vaccine, which dose, where you got it, etc. So we're going to do that with the BERs, so that you have a standard and a passport for houses, because most people are going to go on a journey between now and 2030 and now in 2050, because most of the houses standing today will be around in 2050. A game changer coming online, and the Minister referenced it for us, and is the low-cost loan and the finance side of it. So last year we had an awful lot of positivity around the retrofit schemes, a huge amount of positivity, huge amount in relation to people getting involved. But there was some negativity as well, let's be honest about it, because a lot of people got frustrated because they couldn't get involved, it was expensive, we're starting off. So the low-cost loan scheme, the government-backed low-cost loan scheme is going to be coming out. Huge amount of work being done on this, and I'll be absolutely honest with you, it's not my particular area of expertise, and I'm very much involved in it. So I can say with a degree of certainty, the level of financial prudence and due diligence that goes into between the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland and a European Investment Fund, etc., is ginormous. There's been called out there, so the pillar banks are going to be involved. They're putting their pitches forward, and they're literally finalising the details of the scheme. And that, along with the initiatives by AIB and other banks and other institutions really driving forward, will be transformational in getting people involved in the retrofit situation. So we do have challenges. So for example, this year, for example, our target is 37,000 homes. As of today, we're in about 26,500 homes. So we're in the end of July, we have 26,500 homes done. I'm very confident we'll hit our number this year. We'll hit our number in the B2s. So we're going to do very, very well in this. Solar is going out the door and up over the hill. It's going out the gate because people understand solar. But our challenge, and it is a challenge, we have to figure out how to do it, is heat pumps. So solar is fantastic in terms of helping the electrical use in the home and things like that, but the fundamental thing is we have to decarbonise our homes. So we need to really deploy heat pumps at scale. So we're doing a huge amount of work internally and also with stakeholders to figure out how we change the model and proposition to put in more heat pumps. And that's going to be a piece of work, and that will bear fruit. I think at this point in time, maybe I'll just leave it at that, and we'll then take more questions. Yes.
Thank you very much, Kieran. And it's wonderful to hear that the target of 27,000 is almost met already. We're 26.5 and we're still in July.
It's 37 now.
37, so we're very close to it. But I mean, that just shows the interest that's there and also the availability of the loans and the grants that you're giving, so that's very good. Now, without buildings, without builders, you can't have buildings. So that brings me to our next speaker from the Construction Industry Federation, Hubert Fitzpatrick. He's the Director General of the CIF. He has had a lot of experience in the whole housing and planning area, and we really appreciate him coming here today to speak to us because, as I said, if you want to do something in your house, you need a builder or someone associated with building, be it an engineer or a plumber, an electrician. So, Hubert, give us the situation, and particularly, I suppose, in relation to what we hear so often, shortage of workers and skilled workers. Okay, Hubert.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for the invitation to attend here this morning. And certainly we have our challenges. I mean, the target now for retrofitting is 500,000 homes to be retrofitted by 2030 and 400,000 heat pumps. But to put that in context, we have an industry that's worth about 32 billion euros. It's employing 161,000 people directly. And when we take direct and indirect employment, there's 225,000 people employed in the industry. And it certainly is a very resilient industry and responsive to challenges. We had the total shutdown of the industry only a couple of years ago with COVID-19, but it responded, and has responded well in a very high inflationary environment, and an environment where we had problems with major material supply challenges. And thankfully those problems, I think, are abating to some extent now. We still have some inflationary issues, but it certainly is moderating and is giving a bit more confidence to the sector moving forward. The industry certainly is able to respond to government initiatives, and if I look at the relationship with government over the last couple of years, it has been very, very positive, particularly on the housing front and on the retrofitting front. And thankfully the industry this year, I expect, will deliver in excess of 30,000 new homes. The whole concern last year was that supply was going to drop. But the range of initiatives that have been introduced by government are certainly very strong supply-side initiatives. And within a number of months, the industry is able to go back in and respond to that. And thankfully, I would hope that we had a very positive outcome on front of that. The same will apply in respect of the retrofit agenda. And I'm confident that the industry will gear up on that front. Reference to €8 billion being available for retrofitting over the next number of years will address some of the cyclical problems that we always talk about within the overall industry. Certainly, there are challenges and there are skills problems in every sector of the economy as we speak. I think if you ask any sector, are they short of staff or short of skills, they will all say they are. So we've a major job to do within the Construction Industry Federation. That is to make the industry much more attractive. We have a work programme underway to try to make joining the industry attractive school leavers. We need to encourage the mums and dads that in a career in the industry is positive. It's very varied. It's very, very, very rewarding. So how do we promote careers further within the industry? How do we promote further apprenticeships? If we look at the macro stats on apprenticeships over the first 6 months of this year, one would think it's quite positive that you have an increase in apprenticeships, but by and large, the increases are in the electrical and the mechanical areas, and they're not in the wet trades. And we don't have any increase in apprenticeships in wet trades. And if you look at the areas of plastering and block laying, they're struggling. They're really under pressure. And we really need to come back in and see how can we address these problems. Do we need a 4-year apprenticeship programs in painting and decorating, and so can some of those things, tiling, can some of those training programs be reduced somewhat without taking away from any of the standards that are actually required? ESG is a big issue for every sector of the economy as we speak. That's environmental, social and governance. And we've the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive now kicking into place with effect from the 1st of January next year. That's going to apply to very large companies, but it's going to apply to the entire supply chain. So anybody feeding into those large companies is going to be subject to the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and they cannot shut themselves off from it. So we all have to get much more environmental and environmentally conscious in respect of our overall direction, our corporate direction, because this is actually going to be reported on independently, and we have an obligation to comply with that. On terms of sustainability, circular economy is a big issue. We have to ensure that we minimise waste on site. We reuse material on site wherever possible. And in furthering this, we've an increasing emphasis now on overall digitisation within the sector. How do we promote further digitisation to improve productivity, to ensure we can get work done with less manpower on site? Look at how can we look at modern methods of construction. Can more and more of the elements of construction be undertaken within a factory type setting? How can this speed up production? And how can an environment like that actually make a career in construction much more attractive? That people don't have to be up at all hours in the morning travelling to sites many miles away. And so if you knew you had one central place where you went to work, and within that unit you were building X components or elements of a house or a unit, it actually makes it more attractive. We also have a very male-dominated industry, particularly in the trades. And how can we actually encourage more ladies into the trade and support them, create more mentoring programs? So I certainly don't underestimate the task we have ahead of us, but it is a big influencing task that we have to undertake within all households. And I think it's fair to say that we have what I feel is a very sustainable industry going forward. While it is fragmented and you have large divisions within the industry, while you've specialist contracting, you have retrofitting sector, you have new house building, you have main contracting, you have mechanical electrical engineering contracting, but you're going to have much more resilience and transferability of skills across those sectors. And we may end up with a change in focus and perhaps some commercial buildings over the next number of years. And I'm quite confident that staff that are engaged in the commercial building sector can actually transfer across, be it into new house building, be it into the retrofitting sector. But there are ample opportunities there within which we can achieve those targets. The industry is actually made up of an awful lot of very small companies. And if we look at the size of the industry, 93% of the industries employ actually less than 6 people. Which, so we have an awful lot of small entities, and it's very important that we actually support all those people moving forward. We certainly are going to be preparing a lot more CPD programs, continuing professional development programs for all people within the industry to ensure that all the changes to the building regulation standards and all the various incentives and initiatives that are out there are known within the industry. Because we're very concerned about quality, we have to ensure that standards are met at all costs, and that people have the right buildings built to the right standard and at the right comfort factor. Just in respect of new houses that are built today and all built to A-rated standards, my feedback from people who've bought those houses is that when their families come in and experience living in those houses, they can really see the standard of living you can have there. It's not just about the reduced running costs of those houses, but it's the comfort factor, continuous heat, no drafts. And, you know, I think that in its own right is going to convey a much wider message within the general public that they want to have their house retrofitted going forward. I'm quite confident that the industry will respond to the challenges that we have ahead of us. They are big challenges, but I think with combined effort within the industry and with all the agencies, I think those can be addressed. But we have to keep our shoulder to the wheel on this one, and we need to push forward. So I think that's as much as I could say at this stage, Sean. Happy to elaborate further during the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Hubert, and it was very good to hear your optimistic outlook on what can be achieved, and particularly the ability to transfer workers from one area to another to ensure that we can do the retrofitting up to the highest possible standards. That's very encouraging. And now maybe to further elaborate on that whole area, we're delighted to be joined by Niall O'Connor. He joined Kingspan Group in 2022 and was appointed MD for Kingspan Insulation Ireland in October. Prior to that, he worked for 16 years in Ryanair. And anybody who worked for Ryanair should be well able to work, I'd say. So Niall, you might give us an update on how you think things are going and can go, particularly in relation to your wonderful group, Kingspan.
Thanks very much, Sean. Delighted to be here. Just in respect to Ryanair, all of the scars are emotional, so you can't see any of them. It's fine. I think I'll probably echo an awful lot of what's been said here already, but I think at the start, it's something Ciarán mentioned, that like the targets here are really ambitious. That's because they are out of necessity. They have to be, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, sometimes there's a lot of scrutiny. You know, can it be achieved? The point is, they need to be achieved, and that's why it's crucial. Like if you look at one of the earlier speakers mentioned, 40% of energy consumption, a third of our carbon emissions are related to the built environment. So this is unavoidable. We need to take this action, and it's a good thing that those plans are ambitious to do so. I think the approach so far has certainly been successful. It's bearing fruit in terms of what the SAI have done. The one-stop shop program is extremely innovative. And I think it's also, people need to bear in mind, it's incredibly new, and that it's only in place since spring 2022, which means that obviously it needs to accelerate more, and it will. But there's already improvements and scaling up taking place, as Ciarán suggested. Certainly we work in partnership with the SSE, which is one of the one-stop shop providers, and certainly without speaking on their behalf, I can see the improvements in terms of streamlining processes and everything else that's going on. So that is certainly happening. I think the community scheme offers huge potential as well in terms of the potential for cluster development, which would really help us accelerate the numbers game piece. But beyond that, like it goes back to, I think it was the Minister's comments around kind of individual responsibility, and that can't be forgotten, and that's crucial for everyone to take on board. And even before, getting into the idea of, going ahead with your retrofit program, there's loads of measures people can take and small changes they can make around improving energy efficiency in their own home, whether it's through heating controls that can deliver, 20% savings over the course of a year, draft proofing windows and doors, again, savings of the €150 LED replacement. So all of those things matter, and people sometimes think, is it sizable enough? This is really about all of the incremental gains, all of the marginal gains that we can make, which cumulatively will make a huge difference. The other piece I'd say is that it's crucial that, and it touches again around the broader knowledge and education out there. Anyone that wants to, that is sort of embarking on this process, highly recommend get expert advice in. It's a complex matter. Get a BEOR assessment. And when you have a BEOR assessment, what that allows you to do is it'll give you the position of where your home is at, and that allows you to make informed decisions. And in terms of those informed decisions then, it's, ideally the panacea is, yes, a deep retrofit. We get to B2 as quickly as possible. But, aside from that, that's not always going to be possible for a variety of reasons, whether it's financial or otherwise. But the longer term is you need to get there. In the shorter term, by having that assessment in place, it allows individuals to take a view to say, well, actually, what can we do in our own home? And if we absolutely, and as an insulation provider, we'll of course say this, but really a fabric first approach is crucial for us in that if you take walls, you take roofs, generally heat loss between the two can account for as much as 60%. So what's crucial is that you take that initial step to deal with the building envelope, that it's insulated properly and insulated well. And the next step beyond that then, that gives you a platform to grow and add those extra, the ones that Kieran mentioned. So heat pumps, absolutely crucial. Solar panels, absolutely, vital. We need to get there. But in reality, if homes and buildings aren't insulated to the proper degree, the benefit that those other measures can give are going to be limited. And so effectively, they won't do what they should be doing. They'll do a bit, but they won't do enough. So that's really crucial. And to be fair, the SAI have introduced lots of range of measures in terms of the cavity wall, in terms of attic insulation, where the incentives there are very good. They can be, 50% or more. If you look at the cost implications for that, it's relatively, cost affordable. It gives, in terms of the energy savings that delivers from a cost perspective, it's sizable. So the payback time on those are generally short. So while, the one-stop shops and the deep retrofit are absolutely crucial to drive the overall game, like, we shouldn't forget about individual measures, which can be, very important in delivering where we need to get to. The guys have touched upon the challenges. I tend to agree. There's a few out there of varying difficulty. Clearly, labour is a huge one at the minute. I don't think there's any silver bullet solution to that. The industry needs to work together to see what can be solved. I know there's government reports suggesting 25,000 additional staff in the retrofit space alone, and that's going to be a big challenge to get there. So whatever measures are feasible and possible to explore, I don't think anything should be discounted. In terms of the other challenges beyond that are, cost is clearly one as well. Deep retrofits are expensive. There's no denying it. They will offer huge gains in the longer term. And there's great incentives, and it's great to see AIB and Bank of Ireland and others are introducing, green loans. I think the government initiative around the low-cost retrofit scheme will be hugely influential and hugely important. And they're probably the two biggest obstacles, certainly that we'd see. The other piece, and it's been touched upon a lot, is consumer knowledge, which is limited. And understandably so, because it's really complex. I can tell you, I'm in Kingspan a year, and in the insulation business a year, and I'm reminded on a daily basis how limited my knowledge is. So my heart goes out to people that are trying to decide between EWI and cavity wall bead. It's a complex matter, which is why, that education piece and that, keeping people informed is crucial. The SAI have done a brilliant job so far on that. The website is a phenomenal resource for people. The one-stop shops will play a huge role in that in terms of, giving that expert advice. And what I think it'll also help feed into is that, it was touched upon there, and Hubert mentioned it around the benefits of when people are in an A-rated home. The motivations for retrofit can be different depending on the household. Like some could be for comfort, some could be good for environmental or financial. And the more we understand that, the more aligned we can be in terms of incentivizing what angles people are really trying to improve in their lives and in their homes. So it's I think that's really an important piece. Beyond that, there's lots of other measures and efforts taking place in other markets that are certainly worth considering. But I think at the minute, our focus would certainly be to, for people to take a proactive approach rather than something where it's enforced upon them. The one-stop shop and community schemes in particular offer a great opportunity in that respect. And beyond that, I think collaboration is really the key in the sense that this is something that all stakeholders need to be fully involved in for it to work. And Kingspan certainly look forward to playing its role in that development. So.
Thank you very much, Niall. And again, the theme is positivity, optimism. Not a challenges, but I think it can be done. Now, I have some prepared questions which I can ask the panelists, but I would like to give an opportunity to the audience, and you've been very good, and there's a huge audience here, maybe to ask a question and try and keep it brief, identify yourself, and also maybe identify who you want to direct the question to. So if we could do that, and if there are no questions from the audience, I have plenty of questions to keep them going. So, anybody want to start with a question? Okay. Tom Rodley, thanks, Tom.
Hello. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I was just wondering there, like, you know, we'll say, right, you're talking about bank loans and stuff like that there to, like, all people won't get a loan. Why not put it onto the electric bill so much every month, and that would be one way that they could pay back for the retrofit, because I think you're adding an extra layer. You have to go into the bank, you have to make an appointment, you probably won't meet anyone anyway for a start. And how, that's true, sure, I know people trying to get mortgages, they can't meet anyone. So how are you going to navigate all that? Then you have to navigate the ACI. So I just think the thing has to be made simpler, somewhere simpler. Another thing, another question there was about housing and that to the construction, Hubert. I suppose, I think, you know, you're talking about the wet trades and stuff like that. I think that's a thing in the past. I think we'll have to build houses inside in the factory. That would be my opinion anyway. So thank you very much. If there's anything you can bring back on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rodel. I'll take a few more questions now because I'll only go one round. This lady here. You mightn't. You have a good voice.
Primary school level to take an interest in the industry, because we know we need to get it bedded in early. So no parent really does encourage their child to go into the building trade. It's seen as boots on the ground, and you know, you reference that as well. But there's more we can do, because there's a huge interest within the younger community to be more sustainable, to help our environment. And I think there's things we can pick up on there and now to help build some momentum and get more people with more skills. You mentioned as well digital skills, get them into the trade, get them into training, and get them staying in there as well. I think that's also a problem. We've kind of a leaky pipe where people fall out of the trade. So I think, you know, there's huge potential to build more, you know, appeal in, you know, and pride in building the future that we have for Ireland through the industry.
Thank you very much. Very good question. Point I've raised a few times myself in different fora. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rose Corcoran, and I'm a resident in the local area. And my address is to Dr. Kieran Byrne. Dr. Byrne, if you got a grant for those polystyrene beads and for putting in a new boiler about 10 years ago, do you qualify again for this retrofit? And that's my question.
A good question. Practical. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, here, there's one here. There are 3 or 4 more here. We'll try and take them. Now, the panelists, make a note of the questions that are relevant to you, because I'll go across the line when we are finished with the audience.
Sorry, so you identified this as being a issue obviously for Ireland, but obviously it's a European issue as well. So my question is, say for example, countries who maybe don't have the GDP that we would have, and who would maybe be a little more conservative, say for example, Poland might be one example, because during, say, the Council of Europe elections, they'd always abstained, or they'd gone against it purely because of the fact that they could not make that transition. And so my question, I guess, is how would we be able to help other countries secure that?
Thank you very much. These questions are very good and clear, and nobody elaborating unnecessarily. Thank you very much. Okay, over here. This lady here.
Thank you, Margaret Maher. I'm a householder. And thank you for the input from everybody, and there's no doubting the commitment and the enthusiasm and energy that's there. I suppose what I want to say might be directed mostly to the Minister, actually, because it's really a decision making. And I think the issues are so great. The targets have to, as you mentioned, are ambitious, and they have to be even more ambitious, I think, actually. And in fact, I think it's actually down to incentivizing people. And I think while there is incentive there at the moment, I don't think it's enough, right? And I'll give you 2 examples. Right, if you want to put up solar panels, you're talking about 12 to 15,000. I've looked into this, right, with a grant of 2,400. Now, depending on what income bracket you're at, that's an awful lot of money to come up with, right? And the second one then, I will mention to the Minister in particular as well, is the Creek Conha. Particularly delighted for 2 reasons to welcome that initiative. And because I'm in the process of moving into a house myself. And I had already made that decision before that grant even came into place. And I was delighted that it did. However, the grant is now only bridging the massive gap that's there between the costs of doing the job 2 years ago, which I had hoped to do, and doing it now. So in some ways, the grant isn't that much of it. It's brilliant, and I'm really thankful for it, but it's not really an incentive for somebody to take on the job of going into a village or a town, and I'm in a village. I also think that I would encourage, for the reason of, again, getting people to live in villages and towns where there are so many empty buildings and derelict buildings, I think that incentive should be even greater for the person who will live in it. I know that it was initially that way, and then it was widened out for if you were going to rent it, which is also very important in the current housing crisis. But I think that to get people to live in those houses, I think even a greater initiative. So it's a question of thank you, but I'd ask for more. And I think in the wider question, I do think financially, and I've come to the conclusion personally, there is always enough money. It's where the money is spent, and we see that constantly in public life.
Okay, thank you, Margaret.
Everybody.
1 or 2 more questions now. Up here at the back.
Hi, thank you. Couple of things. Julian, when you say the banning of fossil fuels, is biomass included in that? Like, say, for example, wood pellets? That's number 1. 2, does Sustainable Energy Ireland intend giving a free run, more or less, to its pet product, heat pumps? And if you have a policy towards that down the road, I think you should make it public very, very soon, because people are looking to invest in other sources of providing heat. It's interesting that 85% of the work done, as I think the chairman said, that's a reflection that it's people who can afford to carry the cost of high energy. And I think government has failed to challenge the substantial providers of energy in this country, which they could easily do because they are state-owned. That's electricity and gas. And I just wondered then after that, where does clean air come into this? Because I would have thought that it would be a very fundamental element of the discussion.
Thank you very much. And maybe 1 more question. 2 so. Okay. Down here.
Hi, my name is Steve Allen. I represent the International Hemp Building Association and the European Industrial Hemp Association. I'm here to say that our education in this country, and my daughter is currently studying in architecture, is atrocious. There is no news about new materials. We've heard from the building industry, construction industry, which I'm very great to hear that they're looking towards modular housing. I can provide dozens of examples of how to do that in my book, Hemp Buildings, but we are doing this all over Europe, and we should be providing materials here which have all the implications of a better economy, which would then help people to pay for adaptations that we need to make. But that we need to make insulation materials here, and I'm not just talking about plastic foams, which obviously have a lot of very dodgy implications. I'm talking about totally safe, non-toxic materials that we can make from wool and from hemp, that we can produce, either are producing here or could produce here. And the other thing is that the whole way that buildings are measured by the SEI and by other people is by the lambda way. which the lambda value is completely ridiculous in Ireland as it is measured without any moisture. And as you know, we live in Ireland and it's full of moisture. So if we're going to really save energy and really achieve our targets, we need to change the way we measure buildings. And having some silly little calculation that we can do that makes it all seem easily for one-stop shop and you're professionals, it's not really tackling the actual climate that we live in. And so those are the things we need to change.
Thank you. And we'll take one more, this lady down here. And maybe one more, and the person at the back. Right at the back. We'll stop with you then.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, my name is April McHale and I work for Daikin Ireland, a heat pump manufacturer, and I'm also on the board of the Heat Pump Association. And I suppose we're very obviously heavily involved in retrofitting from the heat pump side of the house. One of the things where I suppose we feel that there's the possibility to accelerate heat pump sales would be the homeowner whose boiler comes to end of life. And it can be a difficult situation, I suppose, because your boiler might be end of life and you're considering the heat pump, but maybe your fabric isn't up to where it needs to be. And it's quite a long journey to get to the point where you qualify for heat pump grant. But in the meantime, your boiler's dead and you need to make a decision. And I think that's an area that we could really focus on and see if there's a way around it. And maybe the passport is a way to go, the renovation passport, because when that person buys their boiler, you know, when they have to replace that boiler with another boiler, they're locked in for another 10, maybe 15 years before they'll make the decision to change to a heat pump. So that's just one thing that I think could really help to accelerate heat pump sales, which is really important. And then just on the training side, you know, renewable energy coming in under either the current apprenticeship for plumbers, who are the main people that install the likes of heat pumps and solar panels to a certain degree. Renewable energy is not really covered under the existing apprenticeship scheme. How do we really focus on that? Because it is a really interesting career path for young people. You know, there's huge opportunity there for many, many years to come. And maybe the whole renewable energy training needs to be looked at. Maybe it's not part of the current apprenticeship, maybe it's a different renewable energy apprenticeship that's needed, but there's huge opportunity, and I think it will be exciting for young people to be able to access something like that. So,
thank you. And last question up at the very back. Almost falling out the window.
Martin McCarthy from Insulex, and we're a registered one-stop shop. And my question is towards Hubert and to a minister. The issue on the ground at the moment is staff. Now, I've heard mentions of figures of 500,000 units being renovated by 2030. From what we're seeing on the ground is we're failing to expand. We're expanding because we cannot get in staff, we can't get in trades, we can't get in labour. And one of the questions I have towards you, Hubert, is why, to fix the immediate future, why are not the wet trades brought on in the critical list that we can import them in? You can bring in engineers, you can bring architects, you can bring draftspeople, we cannot bring in trades. There's a huge market in Brazil, a lot of countries outside of Europe, where we can bring in highly qualified people, but we're not allowed to. And the second point I would like to make is towards our training systems. In the old days when we started training, the trades, the apprenticeships used to do 1 day a week in a training college and 4 days a week with a builder. And from experience of having trained a lot of people, that was a far superior method than having block releases inside in colleges, and might be more interesting to young people coming out on sites, being involved, getting experience from older guys. It might be something worth looking at. We have a really, really critical position at the moment where we do not have trades. So giving out a lot of money, giving out a lot of figures where we have nobody to actually do the work. Our average age profile for tradespeople in Ireland is 47 years, where it's a young person's game. So unless this fact is fixed pretty quickly, all the figures are really not going to stack up because there's nobody there to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good question. Now, there are wonderful questions. I'm not sure can the panelists get around to all of them, but I will just go through them and they can answer the ones that are relevant to them. We'll start with you, Niall.
I think probably the most relevant one was around the types of insulation. The only thing I can say about that is generally Kingspan's aim as a group is to be a full spectrum provider. So in that respect, you know, there's a variety of insulation types, PIR, phenolic, wood fibre, EPS. They all have their disadvantages and advantages, and they all have their place. And certainly it's our aim as a provider to be able to do all of those. We certainly manufacture PIR and phenolic in Ireland. In respect of the wider piece, you know, we're investigating options around mycelium, around hemp, and that's absolutely part of our wider long-term plans. Last week or the week before, I think it might have been, we've taken a majority stake in Steico, which is a wood fibre, very large German wood fibre producer, and that'll create opportunities for us to offer that product in the Irish market as well. So I don't think there's a single solution for all. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that all of these different insulation types, you know, have different thermal properties and different thermal performance, and in respect to that, there needs to be a balance between embodied carbon and operational carbon and across the board. So really, it's a balanced approach that we'd aim to get, and wood fibre and natural insulation certainly has a place in that, and that's evidenced by the fact of our recent investment.
Thank you, Niall. Julian?
I think I may take the question of the gentleman of, and can you repeat about how to support the countries? Yeah. Yeah, no, makes sense. So first of all, we do not really. So the EU is channeling funds in all countries, and this is based on formulas. Obviously, the population is the first criteria, but also the GDP. So the countries that are lagging behind economically and regions, they are helped more than others. So this is the first point. We do not really condition the support to other areas such as immigration, for instance. This is not. There are other. It's not. You know, it's not a blackmail. So please do that, and we will give you more funds. We don't do that, except when there is a breach of certain values, like you quoted Poland and Hungary. There are procedures now because they are under scrutiny for the rule of laws in general, because they are taking some laws that are a bit limiting. So we may suspend EU disbursement for these countries, but for the rest, we don't. The EU cannot, you know, intervene in national politics. It's not our prerogatives. So, of course, these countries, as you said, now rely a lot on fossil fuels. So the EU with all these framework are supporting them like the others, and maybe even more. But for instance, Poland has taken a lot of good policies in terms of solar energy, for instance, and themselves, from a geopolitical point of view, they want also to be free from Russia. So themselves, they see also the interest of moving away from this. So I think this is the most strongest incentive that you really work for your interests. So yeah, we're working on this. I hope this replies to you question. And there was also a gentleman on the pellets. It was for me, or? Yes, it was for you. Okay. On the ban of fossil fuel, no? It was the question. And what about the biomass and the pellets? The question was whether you intend or thinking of banning biomass specifically. Yeah. Biofuels. Yeah. Okay. No, but biomass and biofuels are by definition not fossil fuel, because the carbon was already there. Now there are other issues with the biomass. Is when it's diverting crops, for instance, to make fuels. So we have to be careful. So generally, what we support as renewable energy, biomass can characterize as renewable energy if it's coming from waste. not what we call this biofuel of second generation, and they are their place, like other technologies, like insulation. We are not supporting only one technology. So biomass, if it's coming from waste, as agricultural waste or food waste, as its place, but it maybe never be able to replace all the fossil fuels.
So to be precise, wood pellet is produced from forestry, which is a huge business in Ireland, and is a huge supplier of energy all over the world. So what you're saying is that wood pellet produced from biomass has its place in the family of fuels going forward, and you don't intend to stop them.
It will not be banned.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yep. That was debated a few times in the European Parliament as well. Good question. Okay, next to you, Kieran, you had a lot of questions.
Thanks.
How long do you need?
Well, I'll take a run at a few of them if that's all right, and we'll see how far we go. We'll start with Councillor, and I just didn't quite catch your name to start. Really good suggestion about the retrofit on the bills, and I don't have the specific answer, but I know they tried something like this in the UK, and for various reasons, while it looks simple and easy, it actually didn't work in terms of how it went onto bills, how it impacted people in terms of switching ability over the thing, and how you're kind of connected into a supplier. There's other, I suppose, issues around the billing and all the rest to make up the bill that made it more difficult. So it is good and it's one to look at again and understand why it didn't work, but it didn't in the UK. I'll move quickly on. I think it was Amanda's next question. You talked about the skills gap, and it's critical, right? Let's be honest about this. This is a personal view of mine, maybe not necessarily the SAI. It's our fault. Right, most parents wanted their kids to go to university, become doctors and solicitors. And very few of us parents said, go out there now, become an apprentice and do something. We need to pivot that at the home level. And you're at the right stage. You talk about primary school. That's when kids start really forming their ideas. Interesting about the retrofit, right? We spend an awful lot of time talking about what we have to stop doing for climate change, right? And it really cheeses people off. Retrofit is something you can do and start doing. And even at your individual home level, the minister talked about individual accountability. Making that choice, retrofitting your home, is something you can do that has a positive benefit. So putting that into their minds at the early stage, I think will have benefits, but that's a longer sell from the primary school age. To the lady in pink, and I didn't quite catch your name, or locally, the general principle is we don't fund a measure twice. So if you've already got a grant for, say, I think you mentioned cavity wall insulation, you won't be funded again for cavity wall insulation, but I think you mentioned you got it 10 years ago, so it should last you a long, long time. But what you will be eligible for is the heat pump grant and external wall insulation or internal wall, all the other range of grants that are available. You can get those grants. We just don't fund the same measure twice, but you'll be certainly eligible for the other ones. I think we dealt with the question in relation to the other EU countries, but just to say to that gentleman, we are actively participating in European groups through things like concerted action. So we have staff to turn up every month in Europe, and we share our ideas, and we learn from each other. We find the pinch points, and that's where we do the really interesting pieces. We hear what the guys are doing in Sweden and Spain and Italy, wherever it might be, bring some of it home, and we talk about our story. And that's why the one-stop shops have been revolutionary. It was picked up not that long ago in the Financial Times, and you're talking about really, really interesting stuff. The level of ambition we have relative to others. Our Spanish colleagues, and no disrespect to them, came back to a recent meeting and told us about the 8 or 10 homes they'd retrofitted and using a one-stop shop type model. We're talking about 500,000. So, just the other then lady, I think it was Margaret, might have been your name, but Kona, but also incentivising grants and people. I think you need to shop around in solar. You mentioned 12 to 15,000 for a domestic setup. That seems way out of kilter. We have 130 odd registered solar providers, and that price seems to be. I don't want to get individual pricing, but I can say certainly because I put solar on my own house last year, and it was nowhere near that. I know the prices have increased because of inflation, but with that, the panels have come down. So there is about shopping around, but equally then on the incentivising the money part of it. If I was to put on a Department of Finance jacket, I can easily blame them. What they say is there's a really interesting interplay between increasing grants and actual getting more action and more output, because oftentimes increasing grants means that actually it can actually lead to price inflation. So there's that kind of fine line between getting the right level of incentive in and not actually generating inflationary cost increases. On the Croí scheme, we're involved in that. We're linking into the Department of Housing, and we've had a very good relationship there and figuring out, saying, well, what do they fund and what can we fund? And we're at the front edge of that as well, and it seems to be working reasonably well. The gentleman talked about the biomass, and that's fine. I think we covered that. My love of heat pumps. Well, the simple fact of the matter is we have to Well, I just want to put it this way. We have to decarbonise our heating supply. Simple as. So decarbonise means stop burning things. And biomass is there, but at the end of the day, rightly or wrongly, we're burning something. When we're burning something, there's an emission from it. Heat pumps is the source of electrical heating, and that's the fundamentals. Our retrofit programs are about certainly a social piece around making the homes more comfortable and warm, and there's a lot of information about the benefits of that, but it's also about decarbonising the built environment, the residential stock. And to decarbonise that, the vast amount of energy in a home, over 80% of it is used for space and water heating, and currently the vast majority of us are using oil and gas for that, and we have to decarbonise. That's where the heat pump piece comes in. And I'll just move on. Yeah, the other gentleman there, I think I didn't quite catch a question. You're talking about materials. We're on the front edge of this retrofit journey, and we've somewhere in the region, but depending who's counting, anywhere between 300 to 400,000 what we call heritage homes. We have guidance in place for the heritage homes, and we're starting to actively look at how we start to use, the traditional materials, as we call it. Right now, the way we use our system is any kind of materials used are Agreement certified. They're certified by the NSAI and are in compliance with building regulations and building codes. Some of the materials you mentioned don't have those certifications, therefore they're not in compliance with codes, therefore they can't be used in grant schemes. We recognise this, the industry recognises this, the departments recognise this, and we know we need to move this forward. So we're looking at how do we start to get those newer materials and develop them in a way that they can be used and certified. Because the issue we face is that if we put materials or allow or fund materials that aren't certified or put in the right place in the wrong way, etc., we end up with another building problem down the line. So we're moving on that space. The lady from Dyke in Ireland talked about incentivising of heat pumps. I think you're right, anywhere between the figures are anywhere between 25 to 35,000 oil and gas boilers go wallop every year, right? And they're called a distressed replacement. So you get up some Tuesday morning, typically in November, press the button, the thing doesn't work. That is not the time you're going to start scratching your chin about should I put a heat pump in or should I not, right? So what we're looking at, and this goes back to the Minister's point about tweaking grant schemes, learning from them, putting it back into the mix. We're looking at, say, can we do a kind of a grant, kind of a heat, what we call a heat pump ready? We know from the BERs, we know from the building, and we know from all the codes, and like the new build, you put a new build in, a new build house in 2005, its boiler is now heading for 13, 14 years old, it's coming toward the end of its life. We know those homes, those boilers are going to go wallop sometime. So we're looking to try and develop a scheme around getting the pipework, the groundwork in place, so when that boiler does go wallop, you're not then starting to think about the heat pump, you've got the groundwork in place, and it's a matter of putting one in. But there is a point, and it's a key point for the audience, if you put that technology in, you're locking in a technology for many years to come. That was, and I think the last one then, I think was just as Martin from Insulex in relation to the training, and a tough question I'll leave for Hubert. No, but actually our point of it is we're working hand in glove with industry. We're listening to the one-stop shops, and we've leaned back into department efforts, it's called higher education, higher and further education and science. They've put huge amount of energy into green apprenticeships, into the ETB sector for doing these quick turnarounds, and we're working directly with those, listening to the industry, working with them to put in the syllabi in place for the types of schemes, and I guess we need to do more of that. And you might want to comment further, Hubert. So I think I covered most.
That's good, Kieran. And by the way, we will have some networking time afterwards when we will have tea and coffee outside, and also you can visit the stands, and we're very grateful for putting up them here today. They're very supportive, and they would have a lot of answers to some of the questions you'll be asking. Okay, Hubert.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, number of questions there. One was building more houses and factories. And certainly the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment published a roadmap there some time ago for the adoption of modern methods of construction and public sector housing delivery. And following that then, the Housing Demonstration Park in Mount Lucas was established. And they're getting themselves up and running. They're going to have more pods in place now in Mount Lucas, outlining how more and more housing units or elements of housing units can be constructed off-site. There's a lot more work to do in this space, but certainly it is a way to go. In the case of primary schools, I fully agree. Sometimes when you go into secondary schools, it's too late, in that the kids are already well influenced. But the biggest influence is the mums and the dads. And we have to change the mindset within the mums and dads. I know last year within the Federation, we went into one primary school and greeted with massive enthusiasm. Got the kids fully enthusiastic about it. But I just hope that when they went home that night, that the parents weren't saying, not at all, you're going to go to college. Thankfully, even if you're going to third level now, we've apprenticeships is listed on the main NCA form when you're applying for college, so that they're treated on a par. And sometimes apprenticeships are looked down upon, wrongly so, because people can develop a terrific career from an apprenticeship. and they can go to any level they want. But we certainly have more work to do in the primary schools, and sometimes it is too late when in the secondary schools. We have good relationship with techno-teachers associations, but it is a case that when you go into some secondary schools, they don't even carry the required level of type of courses that you should have for somebody who wants to enter the construction industry. On the whole issue of apprenticeships, I'm a firm believer that we need to relook at all the apprenticeship programs. We need to come back to more training programs that are shorter, more sharper, more effective, because you don't necessarily need 4 years at some of these programs, but properly constituted training programs. And we're in regular touch with the department in respect to this. And indeed, in Mount Lucas, we've developed a couple of training programs there, for instance, in terms of utility operators and so on. They're very, very effective 13-month programs where people can come out with qualification. And can we do that? Because I do agree, we have an awful lot of craft people at a certain age profile now. We don't have them in the younger profile, and it's a glaring gap there that we have to address going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Anything to add there?
Only a small thing I think they just mentioned, just in terms of the different age profiles, and can that be a barrier to obtaining finance? It shouldn't be. It is just about repayment capacity. All banks will just assess based on repayment capacity and is the loan sustainable. And that is the key piece. So age should not be a barrier. Engage. We have more frontline sales staff than any other organisation. Do talk to us. And we just want to make sure the loan is sustainable. And once it's sustainable, we should be okay.
There were 1 or 2 questions to the Minister if he wants to briefly address them. And then we'll have Senator Marie Burns to finally close the event. Okay, Minister, you don't have to go into too much detail, but just the relevant points, because we're running out of time.
Noted, I'll be brief. Can I take Councillor Tom Ruddle? Tom, you're probably aware if people are over 70, they can qualify for the fuel allowance, which their income obviously wouldn't be that high, but if their income of a couple was below 1,000 or a single person 500, they'll qualify for the free warmer home scheme. And if they're below 70, a single person on 465 and a married couple on 642 will qualify for the scheme for the fuel allowance. The fuel allowance is the key. Margaret, you made reference to a couple of points. The solar, one of the reasons we put the installation of solar at 0 rate was to bring down the cost. That's one. 2, on the Creek Cona, your point is well made on the people living. The initial scheme was designed to be people living, but we want, fundamentally, I have an underlying principle. The schemes must be simple. If they're complicated, they won't work. So it's something that we always keep on. So we are looking at tweaking the schemes, but we wanted to broaden it at the time. Pat O'Sullivan, Pat, you made a reference to the clean energy. We have a national strategy, and furthermore, the housing agency, the Health and Safety Authority, they've brought out we put in an SI for clean energy strategy for indoors. There's guidelines specifically on it. That's on a statutory footing. You made reference to as well, Martin made reference to the about the wet trades on the critical list. We're currently doing a review in the Department of Enterprise about the review of critical skills. People can put in submissions between now and the 18th of April, so it's very, very, very timely. And really, I suppose the key thing in terms of the training schemes and the apprenticeships, Hubert made reference to it. We've put apprenticeships on the CO system, so we're trying to find a way where it becomes. I think we have to adapt the apprenticeship system to be some way linking into the third levels. But I take the point in terms of people working. But I think we're doing work on it, but we have further body work to do on that. Thank you very much.
Come on, Kieran. Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. So now to call on our final speaker, we're very pleased to have Senator Marie Byrne, who's the Fine Gael spokesperson in finance in the Shannon, and also, of course, the former Lord Mayor of this wonderful city. So, Marie, you're welcome to give us a little speech.
I'll be very brief. Thanks very much indeed, Sean, for having such a wonderful lineup of speakers here today, because certainly I think the quality of everybody and what they've contributed to today to this very important debate. Certainly I know that it's an area that I think is important to all of us, whether we're involved in our own home, whether it's in community life. I know I'm involved in a community centre. We're looking very much at how we can improve, I suppose, you know, the quality of what we're offering in it and in terms of green energy. Just listening to the different speakers, I think a few key things that I took from it is it's important to get the message out there. And I think that whether it's the financial institution, I know AIB are represented here today. I know I was in a credit union recently and they had a load of signs up about it. So I think it's important to get the message out there that we need, I suppose, you know, no matter what people's income is, I think we need to get the message there that, you know, we're there to help. And I think that that's really, really important. In terms of the skills shortages, before being spokesperson in finance, I was on the education committee and spokesperson in education. It is something that I will take back to the Minister. I do know that the critical skills, as the Minister said, is being looked at, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at further, and certainly across many walks in life, shortage of skills is something that really, really is to the core. So I know the government is committed to trying to address that, but certainly some of the points that were raised here today I will take back. Just to thank Sean for bringing this event to Limerick, because I suppose we're the capital of the Midwest. We had the launch there recently of, I suppose, the Shannon Estuary report, where they looked at energy, be it wind and water, and how jobs can be created. And certainly in terms of, you know, retrofitting, it's really, really important that we meet our climate targets, because, you know, I mean, we, along with every other country worldwide, have to start working towards that. So they are ambitious targets, but I think by us all putting the shoulder to the wheel, as one of the speakers said earlier, certainly will help to address that. But just to say thank you so much again for coming, but also to the audience, because I know that there's people here from industry, there's people here from residential, and there's people here from the suppliers. So I think we can all learn from one another. But thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Marie, and well spoken. Always good to have you. So now just thank you all for coming. I think we've had a very, very good discussion. We had a top quality panelists who were very clear and precise. And I think the whole exercise is hopefully leading to more retrofitting of houses. That's really what we need to do. And I think Ireland is beginning to show leadership in this whole area. I see in Europe, even if we look at the last major vote we had in the European Parliament in relation to nature restoration, we were way ahead of many other countries in terms of our approach. And the same here, the enthusiasm is there. Once the supports are there, and particularly the financial backup, I think this is going to happen and ramp up big time into the future. And it is there because we're all working together. So in conclusion, I would like to say that we concentrated today on essentially private houses. The same targets are there for public buildings. We mustn't forget that. Local authorities and government, and also probably factories and so forth, all those must become more energy efficient, and that's part of the EPPD, which you will see happening into the future. So I'd like to thank particularly UL, Mairead here, again for inviting us, putting your facilities at our disposal. And Mairead, you and I will be on the same side next Sunday in Cork Park shouting for Kerry. It was good to come this week when Limerick had achieved the 4 in a row. It's great spirit around the city and around the county, and of course the standards, I suppose, that the team are setting in terms of hurling. We have to try and do the same in terms of retrofitting our buildings, the highest possible standard in the most efficient way. So in that regard, it's very relevant. And finally, I'd just like to thank my own staff who worked very hard on this for some time, putting it all together, getting AIB, thankfully coming on board as sponsors, and also those who are outside in the stands. That's really, really encouraging. So to Liam and to Honor and those back in Brussels, I thank them very much. It's all about a team, the same as Limerick was a team, we're a team, and I suppose as a country, we're a team trying to ensure that we meet our targets in terms of retrofitting. Because up until recently, I have to say, it was something of an embarrassment where Ireland was concerned for the 2020 targets. They really weren't taken too seriously. We said, oh sure, poor old Ireland, we can't be doing this, it will affect us here, there, and everywhere. But there is a sea change in attitude. Your attendance today reflects that Now we have to transfer that into action. And again, going back to what Kieran said, 26,500 houses already this year. We're going to double that hopefully very quickly into the future. And that will be good for the environment. Some people mentioned air, fresh air, etc. It's good for the quality of the housing stock, your health, your comfort, and something we probably didn't get an opportunity to mention enough, the savings. Over a period of time, the retrofitting actually pays for itself in terms of reduced electricity bills, etc. So with those positive sounds, I leave you and thank you very much again for coming, and we look forward to Ireland leading the way when it comes to retrofitting over the next number of years. Good morning, give a card.